Greetings and welcome to the Destination Goa Trance podcast, bringing you in-depth interviews with artists, label people, organizers from the golden age of the 90s to the modern era. My name is Simon Peter and I'm here with the one and only Tibus.
Awesome! Let's talk about Goa Trance. Or before we do that, let me remind you to hit the like button and share the show so that new people can also tune in. Peter, do you know what is the other name for Earth?
You mean the blue planet, right?
Indeed. And there is also this French company called Blue Planet Corporation. They were one of the very first Goa Trance acts, releasing their first track, the legendary Overbloody Flood, in '93. What is your first memory regarding Blue Planet Corporation?
I think I discovered them a bit later. First, when I came across the Blue Planet album, it was sometime in the early 2000s.
It was the same for me. I still remember vividly when I heard Alidade, and I just couldn't listen to anything else for a while.
Yeah, to me it was also quite an exciting discovery. Even back when I was just started exploring the genre, it stood out to me as something quite special. And to this day, I think that album is one of the finest in Goa Trance.
And it's not just Goa Trance. I mean, it has the elements, but it's something more, a masterpiece that transcends styles. Fortunately, we had the chance to talk with the boss of Blue Planet Corporation, Gabriel Masurel, and ask how this album came together. Enjoy.
If I'm correct, you were originally a drummer in the 80s, right? And
Yes.
how did you start as a musician and what were your initial influences?
I'm not consider me as a musician, really. Perhaps I could, as I started to make drums in the 80s, just found that I had some good facilities to play drums. So gave me the opportunity to play drums in different groups at this time. But just because I always had music because of my big brother, Sebastian, and he was listening to music since the beginning of 80s. So I was like 10 or 12 years old. So starting to give me something by listening this music at the same time. And as it was interesting sounds, I think it was not just music you can hear in television or things like this, but it was really in something more powerful on my own perspective, like a new wave, electronic sounds at this time. So it gave me something really good on the music side, I think. And at the same time, I think I was really interested by music and I decided I wanted to play drums when I was more like 14 or 15. And that's it. And 80s music was something particular for every people, perhaps, I don't know, everywhere, but perhaps at this time in Paris, in France, not in Paris particularly, because I was not living in Paris, but in the quarter. And it was like a code when people were listening music and I listened to this and listened to that and it was like a code and you say, I listen to this or I listen to that, like some tribes.
Mm-hmm.
In certain ways. So it was a way to make I belong to this or I belong to that in certain way.
So yeah, the music was connecting people, right? And forming groups.
Yes,
Music.
Exactly. I don't know if this is the same today because of internet and all of this. Things are more merged in a big way. But at this time, I think it was really something really social identity for people. I say that because I really remember how I was in, we said the lycée in France. So it's like you have 17, something like this. The thing was to write the music you were listening to in your bag when you come to school. It was something like to say, I belong to this family or this family, something like this.
Yeah.
And that was the point. So it was funny to know. It's funny to know that at this time, we do not have this internet connection. So the way you could say to the other people where you were belonging was to write on your back, I'm listening to the name of the group you like, or you have I don't know the name in English. You know, these little things you put.
The pins.
Yeah, pins. Yeah. And you put your pins and you say, I like this group or this group, and something like okay, this guy is listening to this and to this, and you recognize your friend like little bit like this in some way.
Yeah.
If you were interested by music, I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody was like this, but
yeah, it goes back a long way, because I found like a pencil case from my father when he was in school, and it was like Rolling Stones, Beatles, and stuff. He also had the band names on it of his youth, so it goes back a long way. I think
I don't think the music has so much impact in this way today.
Yeah,
it's more like a big melting pot of things, but at this time it was like this.
And the electronic music was even more different, because it was completely different to what came before, right? When acid house and techno started to come, how did it impact you? How did you decide to start making this kind of music?
So, like I said, with my brother Sebastian, was listening a lot of electronic music since the beginning, and so I was, in a certain way, immersed in these sounds. Mm-hmm. Front 242, Need the Reb, Skinny Puppy, Frontline, everything like that. But even more Depeche Mode at the beginning. Depeche Mode was not very famous group really at the beginning of 80s or everything like this. And it was like a normal way to make emerge this electronic sound in the end of 80s. Mm-hmm. And particularly for my concern about the German sounds and all the music where we could hear on Six Records, perhaps you know this. Mm-hmm. So all these German sounds, I was not surprised to hear this sound at the end of the 80s. But even the house music, in certain way, it was not so... It depends of the track. Some tracks were really surprising, like House Nation, perhaps you know this track. But it was too because I had the connection with north of France. In France, this music were coming from north because of the connection with England and Belgium. I was living in Paris suburb, so much people were listening to this. For my own experience, the real big things changing was acid house, because it was really something different from everything I've heard, and really this pure fact that at some point, so one guy, DJ Pierre, takes this TB seriously, play with it. It's crazy story, so crazy, and just coming to this style of music, which was so strange. When I heard the first time this, and I said to myself, but where does it come from? It was so coming from out of anywhere. It was so strange, so new. So it was really about the sound, and at the same time, well, it was a very nice evolution of this music with this German and techno vibe.
Where did you meet Christophe Lebrun, and how did you form Blue Planet Corporation?
And so Christophe was a friend of my big brother, Sebastian. So he was older than me, and they were interested by music. So like I said, Sebastian, Christophe, and a lot of friends. And Christophe started to make music, I think, with Sebastian and some friends, because he has bought a sampler, the Akai X7000 was one of the first Akai sampler you can buy. Was not so expensive, because before it was a very expensive machine. And me, I was playing drums in groups, so I was interested with music. And in particular, I was playing in a group, which was really nice because we were playing the same repertoire of The Cure. Mm. We played not really just for fun, but we had played some concert in the school. There was one guy in this group who had the Roland D15, which was really fantastic scenes at this time. So I think it has an impact on me, but even I was listening to electronic music, but to see these scenes was an impact. So I think at a certain point I was going to be interesting by a synthesizer, and as Christophe has synthesizers, we have to, and he was a friend of Sebastian, my big brother, so we have a connection like this. I say that but because I still have the cassette from music we have recorded in 1989, which called Modern Faces, and we have made this cassette with Christophe, David, which was another friend, because all of this is just a question of people who are connected, friends connected, and we have no plans, nothing to do, but just making connection and trying to make something together. And we have made this cassette with Christophe, and I remember at this time we had this IK X7000 from Christophe, and this friend David, who had this workstation Korg M1, which was really new and big synthesizer at this time. And we had made this recording and make cassette, and David makes the graphics for the cassette, and we put this cassette in some record shop in Paris to be sold.
How did you come up with the name Blue Planet Corporation?
It was Christophe who found this name. By thinking all of this makes me think that at this time we were really connecting through this music with something space. In fact, this music was really connected in something different, out of reality. So finally, we could say out of space, and we were something. A lot of things were in this music, in techno, trance was connected with space. So I think Christophe find this name with this, because it's the planet and it's a human corporation on this planet, but you have everything outside on space. So, but I don't remember exactly how things has happened.
So your EPs on the underground French connection or underground French communication label are the first legendary releases that you put out. Overbody Flowed, of course, is a big classic that was released in 93. How did you sign to this label? How you mentioned these cassettes? Was this basically the gateway?
We have made this cassette, but it was in 89. And from 89 to 93, we have making a lot of sounds on cassette. And it was like making like a pianist who working his piano in a certain way. It was like we were working on our own ability to make electronic sounds, and we were really pushed by the music of this time, because from 89 to 93 it was crazy music going on. So it was like a cycle. Every day you could have something new and different, and it gives you an idea. I wanted you to try something, and so we had making a lot of production during this time and recording this on the cassette. And my big brother Sebastian was going to live in the north of France, certainly around this time, so around 93. He was still going there in north of France in some parties and going to some vinyl shop. And one day he was going in a vinyl shop and had a cassette from us and put it. And the guy in the shop was interesting because it was a shop connected with the label. It was interesting to release this music. So finally it was just Sebastian who was putting this like this. I mean, there was no plan at the beginning, but the fact we wanted to release this music, it was more about making it.
We're really glad that this happened, because Over Bloody Flood is really one of the best kind of dance tracks, especially in this genre. I think it has a special place. And how do you remember the track? How did it come together? What was the idea behind the track? How did you find the sample and what it says exactly? I think it's not easy to understand always what it says.
Like I said, it was just another track on the cassette we put and working on. So as Sébastien made it listen to some guy in the DJ shop, and was interesting by it, we had to re-record it and on the good format, because we were most of the time record it on the cassette and 4-track recorder on cassette, not on big one. So sound was not so good, a lot of noise. And it was Christophe Frère. Perhaps you know him from Denchi Denchi.
Yeah.
We were friends from the same town. And it was Christophe who buys that machine to give us the opportunity to record the track on with good sound. And the voice was made by Christophe.
It says something like pure adrenaline.
Yes, yeah. Pure adrenaline. This is of Bloody Flood. The funny thing is that we do not have a computer as it's like sampler. So the track was programmed on the Korg M1 sequencer. Korg M1 was a workstation. So you had a sequencer on it. So the music was programmed on the Korg M1, and the voice was launched by putting play on the 4-track cassettes when we had recorded the voice of Christophe with big pitch. Pitch, we pitched down very low the voice of Christophe. So it was really, we said in French, artisanal. I don't know the name in English, but it was not in studio. It was really spontaneous. But we had to re-record it for UFK to put it on vinyl. And I remember we were like 4 or 5 people in the studio, because one guy was pushing the pitch bender of the Juno 106 to change the filter. Another 106 was doing the same, and was another guy was taking play on the 4-track cassette to put the voice. And
even though it was written in the sequencer, it was still like a live performance, basically, with the band.
In a certain way, yes, yeah.
And the song has many remixes over the years: Astra Projection, Atmos, Didra. Many people remix the song. Just name a few. And you also had one version that was released together with the Atmos version.
Yeah.
It was also a remix version that you did on your own. Do you have any favorite of these remixes, and on which one is it?
In fact, the remix I did on my own was not on my own alone. It was done with Fred from Didra.
Okay.
And I remember that Tomasz from Atmos, because it was Atmotech, forget to make the credits when he put it on the internet. But this is not my own only remix. It was done with Fred. At this time, I wanted to see Fred Dado and go to his studio to see how he's working, because he's a master. And certainly at this time, I was a little bit low on my perspective with music. So I thought it was a good opportunity trying to make to see how Dado was working in the studio. And so I was meeting him in his studio, and we started to make this remix together. And I wanted to make something. Trance is really poppy in certain way, and you could not make something so too much cheesy, not cheesy trance, but something really trancey and really pop at the same time. So it was the idea, make this strings and something really pop in it.
The second EP came out 1 year later. It's called The Second. What do you remember from this? And especially there is a track called Lubyanka, where the atmosphere, I think it reminds me for the album that you released later. Do you agree with this, or how do you see it?
I don't know, because it was really before the album, and we touch a point which is difficult for me as a guy who is working music, and it's about the production side. So that's difficult, because we are always looking for something well produced. And it seems now it's not a point for people in a certain way. If I listen to 60s musics, I could find it so nice because there is something particular about the sounds. And I feel sometimes that people who are interested by this music today could have something interesting about the flavor of this music at this time. But for people like me who are producing it, it's like this is total shit on the production side, you see? So it's really strange and difficult to speak about all of this because we don't speak on the same level at a certain point. Because me, I mostly analyze my music on the production side because I cannot analyze it on the musical side because this is different. So certainly you find connection on the musical side, perhaps. But on the production side, for me, it's like night and day between this track and what's going on after.
And how did you find the sound of Blue Planet Corporation? I mean, we can call it Goa trance, but of course, Goa trance didn't exist back then. Nobody called this music like Goa trance. So how did you find this trippy sound of early Blue Planet Corporation?
Trying to remake the movie in my mind and remember that I had this interview in the 94. There was this French, we said fanzine in French. I don't know. And it was little things were speaking about this music in 94. So not so much people were speaking. I have just made little research about it. And I see that they had Man Mike from, Man Mike from Underground Resistance.
Yeah.
Who have given an interview in this little fanzine in France in 1904, which is crazy when you think about it after that. And I remember, I think it was when we had made our second EP on UFK with Christophe. And I remember that Christophe and Francis were the two guys who were making this fanzine in their apartment in Paris to make this interview. And they were speaking about Goa. I don't know what was Goa at this time. And I think it's after I asked perhaps, I don't remember, perhaps to Christophe Frère, perhaps, or Christophe from Liquid Lava.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in Goa? What's this? So in 94, I was not aware about what was going on in Goa. So it was really about the fact that we were listening to the same music in the 80s that was played. But because now I make back the movie and I understand what has happened finally. And I find it crazy that the same music was played in Goa on the beaches. So I've seen all this, the story, Laurent, French DJ playing all this music. And that was the music we were listening at the same time in Paris, not in Goa, but in Paris. So like I said before, it was like a really normal evolution from all this music to the point we were making stuff as Blue Planet Corporation at the beginning of 90s. So it was not like we thought we have to make something new, something different, like a revolution. It was just, we have all this background and we just put it in our own way.
And I guess that at this time it was a challenge to even just copy the sounds that you heard. So you had to find out how to make those kind of tracks, right?
Yeah.
Experiment.
Yes, there is something like this on the production side. In a certain way too, I think because we were listening a lot of music, and as I was drummer and Christophe was really in new wave, gothic sounds, etc., which was not pure electronic stuff, we were introduced in this scene by music, not by the parties. That's the point.
Mm.
And so we were not super free parties going on every Saturday. No. We were really coming in this from the music.
Mm.
So that's the point.
How was your collaboration like in the studio? Did you have like roles? Of course, you come from a drummer background. Were you programming the beats and Christophe doing the melodies, or how was the production going?
In fact, I was always interested about machine. And I think Christophe was not so aware about this. So Christophe was more behind me. I was more on the machine. And that was really interesting, in fact, because at a certain point when you are only focused on the machine and the buttons and you don't so much focus on the sound. And when you have someone back on you just listening sounds, sometimes he is outside of the process making, can have a good vision of what was going on. No. You have to put this now and ta. So it was more like this. I was really more interesting in machine and connection and everything. And Christophe was more like a little bit outside of it and the listener. But you should have asked him how he was living it. But this is the way I feel it.
The third and last UKF EP was Wall 3. And the Aqua Loop track.
Aqua Blue? You mean? No.
Aqua
Blue, I think. It's a name taken from French comic, which called Aqua Blue.
Because it contains the sound of whales, maybe.
Yes, yeah.
And you also have the new album Aqua Test. So I'm just curious, where does your inspiration with water come from?
For Aqua Quest in particular, it's the fact that I have no inspiration. It was around 2010, something like this. And because all the things I inspired by was the music since the beginning. And from the beginning of 2010, electronic music doesn't inspire me. So at a certain point, I asked my friend Fabien Leroy, who is working in French edition society and making books, to write a story with 8 chapters, to give me a line to follow, to have some inspirations to make music. And I asked him and as I'm fascinated about the abyss, because I don't know, I do not have makes a lot of research of it, but I think certainly something about life in Earth are coming from the abyss because of this merge of chemic things coming out from the center of the planet, outside in the sea, and you have life in the abyss, which is really incredible. Because there is no light, it's really cold, and the pressure of the sea is so strong. So it's like my own story. I make my own story about and this was the guideline I gave him to write this chapter and to make this album. And at the same time, I like sea. So I like all things going with water, sea, and there is this big impact too, in a certain way, with the movie from Ridley Scott. Oh shit, I don't remember the name, which was after Alien. And when you have this, he's explaining how life is coming on the planet by this extraterrestrial human.
The Prometheus?
I don't remember. Yes.
Oh, that's a new word.
This one.
Yeah. And the beginning, you have this extraterrestrial human who are putting some EDN on the river, on the flow river. Mm-hmm. And this is in certain ways the way he was thinking about how life scans in Earth.
And the next EP, which was Antidote /Soko, which came with the Pleiadians remixing Antidote. So where did you meet the Ethnical guys and how did they come to the picture?
And so at this time, it was, I think, 95. And so we had put this vinyl on UFK, which gave us a little exposure on the trance scenes. And in France, at this time, there was this Step House record.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was this guy, Fred Gito, who was a DJ coming from this label. And he was creating this new label, which called POF, Product of France. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was funny because I think there was a moment where we were with Christophe and Dado from Trance, because I think Trance were on Step 2 House, and Fred were asking, okay guys, so I'm creating a new label, do you want to follow me? And it was between Trance and us if we were going to follow Fred Gito. And I think remembering Dado and Christophe do not follow Fred, and they were stayed in the Step 2 House. We decided with Christophe to follow Fred Gito, and it was Fred who had this connection with Ethnica. It was not Christophe and me who were asking to have this remix. It was really Fred who was thinking about it and asked them to make this remix.
The other track on that EP, which is called Xoko, I really love that. Do you remember anything from that?
And Xoko, so it was released on the compilation, French compilation, Gaia. And Gaia was one of the most famous party organizer at the beginning of 90s in France for trance music. Not really at the beginning of 90s, but in mid 90s. And there was this guy, Bernard, DJ Blix, who was working with the party organizer, Fabrice. And they were making this compilation, especially, I think, connecting with the party. And Bernard asked us to make a track. And when I make some research, I realized there were no information about the fact that Christophe Marcourt, perhaps you know this guy, from Joking Sphinx, we had made this track together, in fact, for this compilation. So I think he's not credited on this track.
The compilation and going to a new label seems to have opened new doors for collaboration. So first, the Ethnica guys remixed your track on their Pleiadians project, and then you also had a remix for Prana's Black Rain track. So how did that come together?
It's the same period. So it was still on Puff Records, and so Jérôme was on Amanite FX, and they make this track for Puff with Prana, I think. And Puff asked us to make a remix of this track. So all of this is connected with Puff Records.
So also had one collaboration with the Slinky Wizard guys, right? Under the name Planet Slink. How did that come together? How did you work together with those guys?
So I don't have all the things in mind perfectly, but certainly we had this contact with Flying Rhino around 95, 96. And they asked us at a certain point to come to London to make a track for their compilation. And it was a super nice time in London. We were in the Flying Rhino quarter. Gus has this big studio. It was a box in the box. So it was at the last stage of the building. And they have made this box in the building where there was this studio. And the studio was super cool. There was not so super technically fashion, but there was everything. And remember, it really strong because it was a big impact on me. These Blue Room speakers, you know, Blue Room.
Yeah.
And there were this, you had the sub speakers, which are so beautiful.
These like speakers, bubbles on top of each other. Like
I love this so much. It's so nice. You have these blue speakers for high and mid frequencies upside, and this like normal bass speakers outside. And the sound was super cool. So I don't remember exactly if we are going there one or two times, but we have met people, we have met Gus, working with him, and George Barker from Flying Rhino. So we were, James Waller was there, and I think we had met at this time Dick Trevor from Greenland, and there was a lot of people, and it was super exciting to go there and to make music with all those people. Super nice time.
Yeah, it really sounds like a good connection between the English and the French scene and collaboration.
Yeah. And I think remembering we had met Simon Gary too there from Lourdes.
Mhm.
And I remember that it was the first time I hear the first Spangel album there. So I discovered Spangel album in Gus studio on super nice Blue speakers. So it was good the condition to hear this music. First Spangel album was at the forefront of everything at this time. Really at the forefront.
And you mentioned that you weren't really party guy, so you were really coming from the music, and the goal was really to make good music. But did you also play as a live act at this time? Did you perform at parties?
So we had played in '94. So it was, I don't know if we had made the second EP, but the first EP was released. Well, it was a nightmare for me. I think for Christophe too. There is a big problem for me about live act with electronic music since the beginning. And so it was just us having this tap machine playing these tracks and us trying to put some sound on top of it. And at the same time, it was not a good condition because the party it was a nice party because there was Xavier Morel, perhaps you know,
Yeah.
and C.G. Bolland from RNS Records, I think. And the guy who organized the party, because of the fact there was another party at the same time, was cancelled. He's asked to himself, yes, I have to have a bigger place to have all these people from the other party who will come. So everything has changed as the last time. So there was a lot of people. And for us, it was the first time. I don't think we were prepared for things like this. There were people super exciting and wanting some powerful things, and we were going on the scene and playing our little melodies. You see, because at this time the song was powerful, and our song was not really for this party at this time. It was more like, there is those French guy who was made a vinyl. It could be nice to have them to play and on the flyer, but that's all. So it was not people who were interested by our music finally, I think. And then it has always been a problem for me because I'm not considering me as a musician, more as a producer. And now if I'm going to play, it's more like I'm playing my music, like a DJ, in fact. But I'm not super interested by live music and electronic. I don't see a group really interesting in perhaps Underworld or Chemical Brothers still. Orbital. I've seen Orbital recently in live in Paris. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's something else. Yeah.
But it's still people who are playing on synthesizer and pushing buttons. So it's and that's the point, I think, for me, because at the beginning, that's really an interesting point, I think, for me. That was the techno music, electronic music was about the fact that there is no like guitar hero on the scene, and everybody focus on it, and you can understand it because the charisma of the singer is so powerful and of the guitarist is so powerful. Techno music, it was just, you don't see what happened. You don't know what happened. There is lights, everybody's dancing, and you don't know where the music is coming from. Like, it's just about the music. It's not about the DJ putting his hand in the air and say, now you have to dance and now you have to fly. No. It's really not this. So that's the point. We fall down completely in this rockstar gap, which was not the goal at all at the beginning.
The last classic EP that you released was Cyclotimic Crystal /Crystal. And especially the Crystal track is slower, less psychedelic, but with a lot of atmosphere. So it showcases how your sound evolved and changed into the album. Did you decide to change your sound, or it came naturally, or you bought new gear and you could make these sounds? How did your sound evolve?
So Cyclotimic was the first track we had signed with Flying Rhino. So I think it was 95, 96. And we have made together with Christophe. And Crystal was more 3 years after. And I was mostly alone. So that's the point. It was just 2 tracks who were made not at the same time. And the time was passed from one to the other. So there has never been any plan.
And as you mentioned, then you later started to work more alone, and Christophe actually left the project. What happened there, and how did it change? Still in contact?
Yeah, we are not really in contact, but we are. It's a group of friends. Christophe from Denchi, Christophe Parcours. We don't see us, but we have a good group of friends from my brother, people who are interested by music and still listening to music. And so Christophe is still in this group, but we don't see each other very, very often. But sometimes, because we have the same friend, we have this is how things were going. And finally, Christophe has his own way, and my own. But perhaps I'm still making music, and perhaps sometimes later I will still making music. And if Christophe is ready to make too, why not?
So let's talk about the first album, which is Blue Planet, that was released in 99. And to me, it's one of the most exceptional, unique sounding electronic records. To me, it pushes the boundaries of dance music in general. It's something else. And still to this day, if I listen to it, I cannot compare it to anything else. It's unique. It's a classic in electronic music in general, not just in Goa trance or trance. So tell me a little bit about it. How did you create it? What was your inspiration for the album, for example?
And so finally, my conclusion is just the fact that it was like we have made with Christophe we say, if you can take the movie comparison, I don't know the name in English.
Mm-hmm.
It was like we had made court-métrage, just little movies, like 10 minutes movies with this little na-na-na-na-na. And suddenly there is some guys, so Flying Rhino coming, don't you want to make an album for us? And suddenly you have guys who give you monies and say, make a movie for me. Mm-hmm. So it's totally not the same story. So that's how things started. So that's the point. I take it as a big movie, and I have to make the beginning. I totally not see it as a collection of tracks, because I don't see any interesting things to make 45 minutes of sounds in the same format, in the same not format, but on CDs, or if you are not something logical between all the things happen. If not, yes, you can do one track and one track more, and that was the point.
So in a story, like in a movie, it was important to have a structure like a story.
Not really like a story, because I was not thinking, you have to make this story. And at the same time, it was like, I loved music since my childhood. And it's the opportunity to express yourself in great exposure, because you have English people coming, you want to make an album? And it's not like you have to do it on your own. There are some people who come and ask you to make it. So it seems that you have something interesting to deliver to. And so it was like all the things you have put in you can give it for the first time. It was like that. So it's like all the things you have understand and you have on your own can deliver at some point. So I think it's the same for every artist who are making their first album. They put everything they have learned before, and after it's more difficult.
Was there a specific new synthesizer that you bought around this time, or equipment that you used that determined how it sounds?
So at this time, so we have this deal with Flying Rhino. So we could buy stuff, And when I think about this, I think about the Korg prophecy. Perhaps you know this machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to love your machine to make it sound right in some way. And at this time, I love all those machines. The design, the look, and everything. So when I was from this machine, I wanted to work on it because I find it nice and interesting. And at this time, Korg prophecy was new one. I don't know which year exactly, but it was present like the mini moog of the new era because it was monophonic synths. And I think some sounds interesting in some tracks on the album coming from this machine. There was this Juno 106 we had since the beginning, which the sound of the Over Bloody Flood track melody is coming from the 106. And the Cheetah MS6, perhaps you know this machine, which was, we bought this one without knowing exactly what could it be. And finally, for me, it's a super nice machine still today. But it was a big challenge because I have more experience in production now, and I do not had at this time. And there is some problems on some tracks because for example, a phase problem, you know this. Mm-hmm. And I was totally not aware about all of these things at this time. And there is some phase problem on some tracks. Super happy now, a guy work on it and managed to correct things. Mm-hmm. It's Andrzej from Hermit, perhaps you know this project. It's sound engineer. Mm-hmm. And he have worked on some of my tracks on this, and I'm super happy because now there is some tracks. There is one track I never played in live since this time. It's Alidad, mm-hmm. and he has working on it to correct this phase problem. And now I think I can play it again.
We will definitely talk about that track, but just to have an overall idea about the album. So where does the title come from? Obviously, Blue Planet Corporation, that's the name of the band or the name of the project. But why Blue Planet as the album title?
Because I do not give a name to Flying Rhino.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have signed around 95, 96, and the album has been released in 99.
Yeah.
So I think it was like Flying Rhino. Reno was not waiting for it anymore like this because 3 years at this time is so much long for electronic stuff. I just sent them the file and I don't remember exactly. There is nothing particularly meaning about the title of the album.
How did the cover come together? Was this also something from Flying Rhino, or did you have any idea for the cover?
And the cover was a friend, always from the same town, Arnaud Moisdon, who I asked him to work on it since the beginning, little. And so he worked on it and he have given some, the photos and the logo. And so is credited as Chrysotome. Mm-hmm. And then there were some guys in Flying Rhino office who makes all the final touch to put it on the right thing. But at the beginning, it was a friend who makes a photo of the statue. Yes, and he has made this strange science fiction creature inside that by his computer.
So was this like an actual statue that he took a photo?
Yes, it takes this photo in Versailles. Perhaps you know Versailles?
Yeah, sure.
Le Château de Versailles, and we are living, all of us living in a town near Versailles, and he has taken this photo in Versailles from a statue in certainly, I don't know where it is, but it's a statue in the garden.
If you don't mind, let's go into the tracks a little bit because most of them are classics and really, really good. The album starts with Apex, which is also an intro to the whole album in a way. And you work together with Gus on it. So how does this come together?
So unfortunately, I don't have so much remember about all of this, but that's the point. It was mostly Gus track, in fact, because I think it was made at the end of the album process, and it was like he had to finish this track to make the album finish. So I remember to have worked on it in the Flying Rhino studio at some point, but there is a lot of Gus still in this track. And I love it because it's so much Gus style in a way with this super groovy and style, even jazzy style.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect track to start the album.
It flows kind of naturally into Crystal, and this version of the track is a little bit different from the previously released version, as we said. How did you come up with this track, or when did you create this version? Was it like particularly for the album?
No. I think that you said that, but there is no difference between the version. There is only one version, in fact. So
okay.
I think perhaps because it has been mixed on the album.
Yeah, maybe it's mixed a bit differently.
And because of the mastering, perhaps it's different from the vinyl, but it's really the same track. No difference.
And why do you call it Crystal? Do you remember that?
Yes. It was because my girlfriend at this time called Crystal.
The third track that you already mentioned, Validate, is one of my all-time favorite music tracks. And even it's really strange that you said that it has these phasing issues because I can't hear it. And I was in the Amsterdam Maritime Museum 2 weeks ago, and that's where I learned what an Validate is. So how did you choose this track name?
It was always linked with oceans, and you have atoll, open sea, so it was in the same vibe. So I don't remember exactly how I have this name, but yes. And I wanted to have just one word name for each track. So I think for this album, it's always one word, not few words for each tracks.
And there is some speech or singing in this track.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
So it was a guy I've met during this time, Paulin, and he was making music. He was more in the metal scenes, I think, but he was in music. And we were being friends at this time. And I said to him, I'm working on tracks, And he was coming into the studio and makes his voice naturally, so very quickly, and he wrote the lyrics. So I think about the lyrics, we still know at this time the name of the tracks, because it seems the lyrics connected with the title of the tracks. So I think I know the title of the track at this time. So I certainly could say it's calling Alidad, and he wrote this.
This track was written with your brother, and you collaborated over the years.
Yeah. Sébastien always been there since the beginning. So it has never been really a question of, because you have seen that, and it could be a problem now at a certain point, because as we were so not aware about what we were doing, we were not checking. We have done this with this and with that and with him, and it was more friends. And we starting with Sébastien, Christophe from Danchi. They were friends who has been there when we were recording the Overplayed Float first track. So Sébastien has always been there and will still be there. So I don't remember exactly what we have done together on this track particularly. But that's not really the point for us.
And it also has an alternative classical mix, which came out a few years ago, actually, on one of the compilations that has like a piano line on it. When did you create this one? Was it created at the same time?
So, yes, this question makes me think about the way I was working at this time. So, at this time, I was not working with audio files on the computer. Computer was only conducting synthesizer and samplers as MIDI.
So it was a sequencer, basically.
Yes, finally it was just a sequencer. Exactly. So finally, when you were working, you could not finally change from one track to another one because everything was checked on the channel mixer and this equalizer, the sampler. And so if you wanted to work on this track and another one, at the same time, it was a nightmare. So it was one track per one track. And so finally, and at the end of the session, I was recording the session of that on that because I've realized that when I was going back to one session, just by putting play on my DAT machine and just listening without putting on and off on my machine and checking everything, it was more direct. So it was suddenly you have fresh ears and you just listen to music. Mm-hmm. And in 1 second, you see everything. This sound is too loud, and I have to go more long on this part, and after I was putting my stuff on, samplers, So this is why at the end I have lot of version of songs on that. And finally, at some point, some guys asking me, do you have an release version or release tracks? So we're going back to that and find this other version or things.
And then the fourth track on the album is Micro Mega, which is a bit spookier or a bit more mysterious track in a way. What is the story behind that one? How did that
So this track is directly connected with Electric Universe Stardiver album. Perhaps you remember there is a lot of this breakbeat samples on tracks. Is really inspired by this groove.
Yeah, and this one was made together with DJ Thierry, right? At least on the Discogs credits says so. And who was he and how did you collaborate on this track?
And so Thierry was official DJ of Gaia parties we were speaking about before. Mm-hmm. And he was to the DJ of French label, a really nice French label, XDR, XDR in French. And so we had met through all this scene. And at a certain point, we were making some music together. He was going in my studio and we work together on this track. I think at a certain point, I was a little bit tired to be alone to work only on this. So at the moment, to have someone outside of you are coming, it's really something fresh and new and a new energy for you to put something new in your music.
And the next track is Atoll.
Yes.
The most heavy track, I think, with a really heavy rhythm. So why?
I don't feel it so heavy in my own point of view, but I don't know. Certainly, I was not planning everything. I have to make this track at this moment, but this is the track I like. And there is this voice which has been recorded from a girlfriend of my girlfriend at this time, Christelle. Mm-hmm. And she was speaking Iranian, so she is speaking words in Iranian in this track.
Nice. I would have never guessed that.
I don't know what she's saying. I have to check what she's saying now. But she's speaking it's the Iranian language.
And then it's an interesting connection to the next track, which is called Dialect. And how do you remember this one?
Yes,
what do you remember about?
So you speak about the track with Thierry, and Thierry was working on this track, in fact. And interesting about this track is perhaps you have heard there is a sample from a guy, and the sample from Rajara. And there was this French documentary at this time talking about trance. I think Goa trance. Mm-hmm. I think you can see this documentary on the internet on YouTube.
Yeah,
I think it was made by Martin Messonnier. And I think I've taken at this time the voice of Rajaram, who perhaps has been interviewed for this documentary, or perhaps they have taken some interview from another place with it, and he say, "We are under control. We are something like this." It's Rajaram speaking.
Wow. That's a really interesting info about this track. Not sure if not many people knew it. So, and then comes Open Sea.
Yes.
Which is again a faster track and really dynamic. And it's kind of like a twin of Dialect in a way. It's maybe the two complement each other a little bit. Maybe this one is a bit more melodic.
I don't know. I just remember that I have put a lot of. You were speaking about whale sounds before on Aqua Blue, and it was a little bit like a joke with my brother Sébastien, with Christophe, and with Christophe from Denchi, because I think Christophe from Denchi too, because they were taking that like a joke on. You put some whale sounds it's like a little bit naive, something like this. And there is a lot of dolphin sounds in Open Sea, perhaps.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little bit hard about the frequencies. And this is where you see that frequencies made by dolphin could be very high. It's very So that's what I remember about this track.
This tempo starts to slow down with the next track, which is called Roma, which is the first down-tempo track on the album. It's not down-tempo or downer tempo. So where does your fascination with the slower tempos come from?
It's not a fascination. It's just the spectrum of electronic sounds, which come from space music to ambient to down-tempo. 130 BPM to 140 to 150 to 160, and it's just the fact how you play with electronic music, so that I always seen that from all the spectrum. And perhaps because I was listening to Aphex Twin music at first, I think on my own perspective, the same way we could have a connection between all of these tracks in certain point is a tribal way. It's a rhythm way. I have found on the Aphex Twin tracks some really tribal vibe on the first tracks, and which are really trancey.
Yeah.
So it's not the way you have made this music more, I don't know how to explain it, but more experimental and very structure the rhythm. But really at first, for me, Aphex Twin, super tribal sounds. Potaker is super tribal sounds too. And this is what I like. So I don't know if this is what I give to my music, but in certain points, which is slow or fast, it's something like tribal. I like.
The album ends with Arcana, which is a lot of people consider it to be one of the best chill out tracks in psychedelic trance, or it was put on an album. So what did you have to try with this track? Do you remember?
And finally, this track was the first I've made, and I think it was made before we signed the album with Flying Rhino. So it was just because this track was existing. And for your information, a lot of this track are coming from sample CD, which has been made by Uwe Schmidt from Lassig Benthaus. Perhaps you know this groups. Perhaps it was 92. It was made super electronic stuff, super tight electronic stuff. And he has made available all the sample of one of his track, which was called Clone Binary, I think, on a CD sample. And they give me opportunity to speak about two very important persons about Blue Planet's story, who are Sébastien Pelletier and Laurent Moreau, who are two guys who were super hardcore ravers on the rave scene in Paris, who were friends of Christophe Lebras from BBC. And so we were connected. Sébastien and Laurent were making this little group called Neum Cortec College. And perhaps you have seen some artwork I've put on internet with these colleges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's Sébastien and Laurent who were making this since the beginning of 90s, taking all images from the flyers for techno parties and magazine. And Sébastien was really into electronic stuff. And it was him who gave us, he was in Amsterdam, I think, at this time. And he bought this CD in Amsterdam at the beginning of the 90s. And Arcana, there is especially the rhythm, the like we say, refrain in the track. And you have something more quiet. There is sometimes more powerful. And there is this super electro rhythm is taken from this CD. So I take the opportunity to speak about Sébastien Laurent for this track, because music is it's not me or Christophe, it's a lot of people.
It's difficult to pick a favorite track, I know, but do you have any favorite track from this album?
It depends. I was really not friendly with Alidad because of his big face problem. But now that this problem has a little bit repaired with his Fantasies work with Andrzej, it's a track I rediscover, and it's really nice to rediscover it. I play it now in my live art.
The album was somehow licensed to a label called Northern Exposure. Can you tell what happened there?
So finally, Flying Rhino was bankrupt at the beginning of 2000s. So it was a big challenge for me, because it was really, Flying Rhino was really my family in a certain way for music. So I was like alone about this. And then I going out a little bit about all this electronic stuff, because of music at this time was not inspiring me so much. And around to the end of 2000s, around 2010, people were coming back. It seems they were coming back to this sound. And so was this guy from this label, John Pitcher. And at this time, I was thinking there is nothing to do with this music. It's finished. So when there is one guy who contact you and are you interested to have a deal, that was an opportunity, because Flying Runner was disappeared. And he was like telling me too about the way they could use the music for making money, but using it on, he said, synchronization. You see, when you use it for not movies, but all the things about that. So for me, it was like an opportunity at this time. And it was a real big mistake, because I realized after that it was a guy who was just licensing things that was not working anymore, because I realized it at a certain point when I've seen on Facebook a contact like Rusty again, who is a famous guy who has worked with Visage, the group Fade to Grey. Which he seems to have the same problems with the same guy. Mm-hmm. So finally, at a certain point, I feel a little bit, I do not have to deal anything with this guy. So I don't have anything to do with him. I don't want any money from him, because perhaps I'm waiting to know if I could make something new with Blue Planet album. But because the fact is just he has taking the CDs tracks and put them. There is no work on remastered the tracks in a new way. Nothing to do with all of that. So, but it's like, I think it was in 2009, 2010. So it was like, at this time, I don't think nobody was really interested about this. It seems now it's a little bit more, but so it's a mistake from my point of view.
And you mentioned that now you have a new version, a couple of new versions remastered by Andres, I think.
Yes.
So do you plan to release those maybe?
For the moment, well, quite a strange situation, but I'm not super friendly with all this streaming, everything. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So at a certain point, I asked to myself, with IA, everything, all of this, the future is not for artists to keep their music for their own, and to play it for people and people to come. That's what happened for me when I was going to see Mike Maguire playing in the beginning of 90s, because I knew that he was playing music I never heard. So at a certain point, I start to think like this, because you have so much music on internet. You don't have any information. You don't know who is making it, who have done this, who have done that. No. It's just like water. When you open the water is going on, close, water is going stop. Music is like this now. You open the things, music is going out, and you stop.
EP called Digital Forward before you went on a hiatus. This EP, it has two tracks I remember well.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a bit darker, less melodic.
Yes.
And was that the side guys? I mean, a lot of trance acts like Extreme, for example, but also Electric Universe you mentioned, or Ethnica, they played more darker, less melodic stuff. So why did you also play a little less melodic music at that time?
Yes, that's a good question. I don't know. The point is that it was the first time I was using audio files in computer. Like I said, for the album until 99, I was just using computer as a sequencer. And then after, going in audio files in computer, and with a new application, which was Digital Performer. And this is the way I think of it. He has his own sound at the same time. It was like Digital Performer has something in sounds too at the same time. And it was magical for me, because it was super playground open suddenly, not just working samples on the samplers, but just looking to your sounds in computer and just play with sounds with audio files in computer. So it was really about that at this time. So certainly it has an impact on the music itself, and certainly the music which was played at this time as an influence. Always been influenced by music I've heard. I never think I was creating something out of nothing. I always needed. This is why I do not make trance stuff during a lot of years, because there were no inspirations making me want to make new sounds.
After some time not releasing any new music, we already talked about remasters and re-releasing stuff. Then came Dot Records with a 2 CD release idea for Blueprint for Survival. That was a 2 CD compilation in 2009. How did that come together? It had like many of the old EP tracks we already discussed in unreleased versions as well. How did they approach you, and how did the title come up, Blueprint for Survival?
So it was, in fact, it was started by Chill Tribe Records. Perhaps you know. It was a Norwegian guy I've worked with on 3 compilation. It was a really nice guy, and we have worked on 3 great compilation, Chill Tribes, and he had made me play too as a DJ in Oslo. It was a super nice night. And certainly at one point, he asked me or proposed to me to make a compilation of all tracks. And finally, it was stopped. I don't remember why or what happened. And he has given the things to Federico from that record this time. So it was just me working with PKS, and he said, I cannot continue, and I give it to that records. So that's but really at this time I was not aware at all about the fact it could be interesting people to put my whole stuff, because at this time I feel on my own it could be more interesting today, but in 2009 I do not feel it interesting at all. But it was people proposed to me to make it, so why not?
Yeah, and around this time you also released 2 EPs on the Hypnodisc label by Japanese legend Masayuki Kurihara. So that was under your own name, actually, not under Blue Planet. And the 2 releases were Your Body Is So Freaking and Make It Funky. These were like really old school acid house tracks, basically.
It was really like having an 808, SH101, 707, Juno 106. And I was just working with this machine together, recording each machine separately in the computer, and then reveals the music in computer from that.
For me, it was a huge surprise in 2022 when you released your new album, this 2CD Aqua Test. You already thought about the inspiration for this album and how basically these poems or poetry was the basis for the album. Can you tell a little bit about these poems that accompany the album that were written by Fabien?
And so Fabien is a friend of mine, and he's making traduction. And recently, for example, he has made a new traduction of Frank Herbert Dune in France. And at a certain point, I would have not any inspiration from the electronic music. So I think it was around 2010, something like this. And I asked Fabien, can you write me something? Makes me a guideline to make music. It was as simple as that. And it was not just trying to transpose what he has written in music, because it was too difficult, but to have something I could take on my own. I have my own inspiration in interpretation of what was written, which was just to have something just not coming from nowhere, but something I could start from. That's the point. So finally, I don't think the tracks have not a particular sense about what Fabien has written, but on my own interpretation, there is some, and that's it. It was just a starting point for me to make music.
The album has an interesting cover. It kind of looks like a dragon or a snake, but it's also shaped like a number 29. What is it actually?
I never realized it. I never realized it was number 9, but it's something I've made on my own at first, and since long time. I don't know where it comes from. Certainly about these tribal things, always. It was like, it's AquaQuest. AquaQuest is, the story of AquaQuest is like a future way of seeing the humanity, and the way that perhaps you could have this super technological connection between people, and you do not have any nation anymore. You just have those big cities connecting together with a rich way of live, or a technological way, where it's really in defense, is like a fortress, like a chateau fort. I don't know, it's not in English. And outside of these big cities, there were only lands with poor and all the other people. So it's like a little dystopic way to see the way humanity could evolve. And always they have super fascinated too by the caves, guys who go with swim diver, cave diver. People who are going in caves with a lot of oxygen and air, and they don't know exactly where the cave is going to, and it could be very dangerous. And it's something you see,
even more dangerous than just normal deep sea.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where the cave is leading.
And it was like there is this really dangerous way through these dive caves, going in this natural space, which is with mountains and these natural people outside of this. So it's like an allegory. I don't know the name in English, but so this is the point of the story.
And did you always have a concept for a 2 CD album? Because some of the tracks on the second CD seem to be like the different versions of what you have on the first.
The second CD was not really planned, in fact, and finally it was Greg Hermetek was made the master. I've met Greg through Gus Steele and Cozy, because Greg was making a mastering for them, and suddenly on his own, he has recording his voice, speaking all the poetry from Fabien. And wow, super nice, and suddenly I realized I could make something with this, and this is where I think let's have a different version of all the tracks from the first CD in this different version with the voice of Greg speaking about this poetry from Fabien.
Some tracks on the album have a really positive vibe or energy, especially in the second half of the first CD, if I remember well. So where does this positive or optimism come from?
I don't think I was so much positive, because I finished the album during the COVID, which was really strange period. And the more I'm old, the less I'm positive. But I think because of my age, perhaps. Or perhaps I'm more and more realist about what's going on. And I don't know. There is, in this album, there is a lot of tracks. For example, Infinity. It's a track I've made. I think it was really at the beginning of 2000s.
Oh.
So it's a really long process. So.
And my favorite track is Passage. Can you tell me something about that track?
Yes, there is a sound. There is big influence outside of. I don't really connect it directly, but I'm a big fan of Akira soundtrack. You know it?
Yeah.
And there is this gamelan percussion. None of it. And you have this percussion too in this track, which are coming from a sound, I think, from the D55. It's the expander of the D50. You have it. And the sound is gamelan. And this is this percussion sounds coming from it. And I think I was really connected with this Akira percussion vibe. For the rest, it is really long process. There is a sample I've made 10 years ago, and I have putting a lot of little pieces everywhere during 10 years. And I take a lot of pieces from everywhere to trying to make something coherent in one track.
A couple of tracks even feature Stefan Holzweg from the Total Eclipse on bass. How did that come?
Big honor for me, and was so happy to ask him not to play synthesizer as Total Eclipse, but to play bass instruments. It was his first instrument, and he has made a bass so fantastic. It makes me think about Herbie Hancock track from 70s. It's incredible, and was so happy but it was really hard to mix this track, and I do not mix it. In fact, it was still on rush, and I still think there is something we can go further in this track, but I'm so happy and honor that Stefan, who is such an incredible musician, takes the time to take his bass and put this bass on this track. So I'm super happy to have it.
The last couple of years, you had 2 bigger collaboration projects. One of them was Congas Atlas, the Super Cozy.
Yeah.
And you also had an EP with Thierry Gotti. What can you tell about these projects?
And about Congas Atlas, it was at a certain point where I was wanted to go back to more trance vibe. And I remember I was super impressed and inspiration from a youth mix. But it's very strange because it's a youth mix I've heard on his youth SoundCloud. But I think it's a mix from perhaps, I don't know exactly, 2012, something like this. And I don't know the music he has played on this SoundCloud mix, but it was like slow trance, slow psychedelic trance. And I find it super, super exciting. It's one of the inspiration I've got on this. Then we have worked together with Cozy. I've made some tracks for her label Hippo Espresso. And all of that, I needed at a certain point to make some music with some other people to go back on tracks, on trend tracks. I do not have the strength to be able to go back on this alone in a certain point. But finally, Cozy, we work together, and I'm super happy about what we have done together because we were two super inspired by exotica music. But perhaps you know this style of music, I don't know. It's a genre of music from 50s, 60s, and it was like easy listening music in certain way, but in certain way, ambient music is easy listening to.
Yeah.
It's music you can hear without hearing it. It's just music to put an atmosphere in a place. And exotica music from the 50s, it's exactly the same goal. It's just to have music to make something in the air. So we were touched by this same vibe, and in a certain way we tried this vibe in this music. With Thierry, it was more about with Yanis Jaya, fantastic friends. Yanis and Johannes, Silicon Sound, super good friends. Love Yanis since a long time, and Yanis, I've worked with Oleg Spice and Thierry Gotti on some tracks with HoloX, some project, and I have contact with Charles from Oleg Spice and Thierry through Yanis. And finally, we have made music together. I was working on AquaQuest and one track, and I asked to myself, why not to ask to Thierry to put a guitar on this track, and he has made super nice vibe. So after we work again together, and I consider Thierry a little bit like Stevie Lage. I think it's very hard to electric guitar and electronic stuff. Super hard, I think.
Yeah,
it's not so easy. Stevie Lage does it super nicely, and I think Thierry does it super nicely too. He find a way to put his sounds in the electronic stuff. And I don't think a lot of guitarists can do that with electric guitar.
What is your favorite track that you released? It can be on your own name or Blue Planet Corporation. What do you like the most, or what you're proud the most of your release?
The track I'm the most proud of about the production point of view is Entropy and Digital Forward Inclusion. And the name of the track is not Digital Forward. It's Digital Forward Inclusion.
Okay.
They lost the last inclusion because it has been made around the beginning of 2000. And the Digital Forward Inclusion was the name which was given in the United States to put the Digital Forward Inclusion means that all the people could be connected on the digital domain. So the inclusion side was important, but they lost it.
You just released a co-production with Mickey Noise, which is a real up-tempo psychedelic trance track. What are your plans for the years to come and with Blue Planet Corporation?
So now going back on the trance sites, I feel it again, and I want to make trance stuff again. And so I will concentrate on the production side only with computer I will buy a new computer, just trying to work only with computer. And because of the sometimes too much digital side of computing, I will try I still will keep my Cheetah MA6, and I still have tons of cassettes with the sounds in it. I'm trying to take the sound from 90s cassettes and to recycle it in something new. That's the goal for the moment. And so to make trance again, just that. And all my stuff has been remastered by Andrzej and Mickey too. Mickey has worked too on remastering to play more with my old stuff remastering and to see how it works.
And that was our interview with Blue Planet Corporation. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, people. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe and share the show. If you have any ideas, questions, leave a comment or message us on Facebook. Cheers.